there was bodies spilled out of the backside of the open ramp of the 47. And I remember seeing, like, in the thermal, you know, heat signatures are white, right? And you could see their white bodies slowly turn to black.
Roger, we have a fallen angel. Extortion. Hold us in traffic. Anybody out there? We have a fallen angel.
You've got an amazing force. You've got the world's best sitting in the back of this flying school bus. It lands down, they shoot it out of the sky. That loss is felt this moment.
Jason Workman's wife and family wanted me to... Workman was my boy.
Things happen in war, things that you wish didn't happen, you wish it wasn't a reality. It's absolutely a reality.
Did not want to get off that train. It's like the train was going on, the operator gets left at the train station.
Doesn't matter how good those dudes were. You couldn't have picked a better... There wasn't a more capable fighting force on the earth than the dudes who were on that helicopter.
She gets like a weird look on her face and she goes, "There's a rainbow behind you."
First deployment in the SEAL teams, you get in, biggest loss in SEAL team history happens. Then you get through Green Team, and right after you graduate, maybe less than a year afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, August of 11.
Extortion 17 happens, which again is the biggest loss in SEAL team history. So, let's start there.
Kind of the way we talk about it is, where were you? Where were you when 9/11 happened?
Yeah.
Where were you when June 28th happened? And where were you when August 6th happened? I know exactly where I was. I was sitting in a movie theater with my wife sitting next to me, my shooting buddy's wife, and then my shooting buddy. We're all watching a movie, and we're probably 45 minutes into it, and phone goes off, and you're glued to these things. Can't miss a text message. Like, I mean, the addiction to your phone becomes a real thing. Like, you can't miss a text message. You can't miss a phone call, ever. And his phone goes off, and mine does too, and we both crack him. And we both looked at each other at the same time. And he had got a text from somebody in the White House, a staffer, used to be a team guy, and he said, "Call me right now." And I had the exact same thing, the exact same time, that said, "Call me right now," from a different guy. Okay. And he texts back, "What's up?" And he said, "Afghanistan, helo, get to work." I looked right at my old lady, get up. Walked right out of that movie. They split and drove each other home, and I jumped in the car with him. We drove straight to work.
3 days before I was going to rotate out to come back home, Extortion happened.
Oh, man.
And we were supposed to go out that night. So we were in J-Bad, Jalalabad, and they were in, I can't remember where they were, but we had the birds or so, like our 160th guys. We had weather or something. They couldn't fly, so we didn't go. So they couldn't get our birds, so they used National Guard ones to go do their op. And I remember being in my, we got a deployment. You got all your individual rooms, and you got like a common area where the coffee's made, and you got the video games, and you watch TV, and got the couches. I remember sitting in there with my freaking feet propped up, just chilling, watching probably Rescue Me or something good, and. My team leader comes in, he's like, "Hey, a bird just went down." And he's like, it's our boy's bird. Like, there was 2 of them. One of them had all our guys, another one had just the air crew. Devastating, regardless of which one shot down. So obviously we're hoping it's the one without our boys. Less lives lost, right? So we all like rush over and they got it up, pulled up on, I can't remember if we were starting to get our gear on or we were trying to get SA, situation awareness, of what was going on. But I remember watching the TV screen, like this huge monitor, and they had the thermal from ISR looking down, and you could see the helicopter down. And there was bodies spilled out of the backside of the open ramp of the 47. And I remember seeing, like, on the thermal, you know, heat signatures are white, right? Mm-hmm. And you could see their white bodies slowly turn to black. And their life was leaving them. And they were gone.
Everybody was in there. Like, it was spreading fast. Nobody had any real details. I mean, we did, but it went into, it turned into a fucking circus. It was like I was reliving a movie that I'd already seen that I didn't want to know the ending of. I've been here before. Like, I already knew what this is. All the notifications, basically everybody's throwing on dress blues, they're driving out. Me and my wife are grabbing groceries and gallons of Starbucks and dropping off at Gold Star houses. Just really trying to take care of our own. That's one good thing about the Gold Star community is they know exactly what they need. So basically, notification team would go out and then we would roll in behind and drop off gifts, you know, groceries. We pick up kids from school. We do whatever we could. And that's the collective, that's everybody. It's just what you did. Trying to make sense of what had actually happened. There's just no good way to go about that. I mean, that loss is felt this moment. Like, that didn't happen. How did this happen again? And you couldn't explain why. I mean, things happen in war. Things that you wish didn't happen. You wish it wasn't a reality. It's absolutely reality. It's another reality check. Doesn't matter how good those dudes were. You couldn't have picked a better... There wasn't a more capable fighting force on the earth than the dudes were on that helicopter. And it didn't matter. It did not matter. Gone in an instant. It's like, how are you going to come back from that? And then selfishly, how are we going to take care of all these families? Like, what do we do now? It's like every foundation just dumped in, trying to support, trying to do whatever they could to... I mean, inside of that, we're trying to rebuild. Like, we're still fighting the GWAT. Like, we can't let this be our defining moment. We just can't. We've been through this thing before. Unfortunately, the CO at the time had been through this exact same thing. He was a Group 2 Commodore when Red Wings happened. He had been through this whole thing.
We all go get our gear on. We're grabbing quickie saws in case we got to cut dudes out. We're grabbing anything and everything that we think for this rescue operation / keeping the enemy at bay. And they wouldn't let us go out. They were sending the Rangers. And the decision was made by our CO. And at that time, I wanted to stick my fist through his face. I was like, how dare you? That's our boys. How dare you? But thinking about it now, always hindsight, right? He didn't want those images to be our last images of those guys. But, you know, some of the Rangers more than capable of taking care of that. They did a great job. They were out there for probably, I think, 3 days dealing with that, getting the bodies. So we get the bodies back, and we had, you know, I think it was a total of like 38 or something like that. And we had 2 C-17s to get all these bodies back to Dover. And it was my time to go back a couple days later. So I was one of the guys that, there was like 4 of us, escorted all the bodies back to Dover to meet the family members of all these guys. And when I was over there, I was told by my team leader, because the command got in touch with everyone, and Jason Workman's really sneaks up on you. Jason Workman's wife and family wanted me to... Workman was my boy. Wanted me to escort his body back. to Blanding, Utah for memorial service. And then take him to Arlington where he was going to be put in the ground. So, of course, I wouldn't refuse that. So I talked to the doctor or whatever who was dealing with the bodies, and I had him point out workmen's, and most of the bodies they were charred. You couldn't tell who they were, but workmen had some tattoos, and he showed me his casket. So steel caskets. And I put my ground pad next to him. Put my sleeping bag next to him. Sat there, laid there, ate there. And you know how they always tell you, like, on takeoff, like, please sit down, buckle up? They wouldn't dare ask that. Just lay there the whole time. Next to him, put my back on his casket. And just escort him all the way back. Get to Dover. And then we land. The whole family's there. And just seeing.
Put a plan in action. We had to rebuild the force, had to take care of all the families, take care of all the kids. Me and Patsy started making memorial t-shirts within 12 hours. Just trying to raise money, just trying to do anything. That's what a lot of people don't realize is there's a gap. Like, if you're pronounced dead, your paycheck stops. There's a long gap before any kind of life insurance comes in or any kind of support. So the only thing that puts food on the table, the only thing that puts gas in the cars are foundations. Like, people that are raising money. And we don't know how long that gap's going to be. Like, now we've got, big name foundations that really lend a helping hand, but it doesn't matter. To them, to that singular family, the whole world just came crashing down. It's over. Like, it'll never be okay now. It's like anything you can do to try to lighten that burden, you try to. That's making a memorial t-shirt, that's, picking up the kids and having them make skateboards, whatever it might be. You have to do something. But I'll tell you what, that was a super dose of reality. Because doing a lot of shit in helos, and it's like, that's the reality. That is exactly what is going to happen. Like, there's nothing you can do for that. It doesn't matter. Like, you can't plan for that. You just can't. I mean, you can try to do things, but a helo gets shot down with all those people on board. There's no good scenario out of that. And it crippled us. We had to rebuild the force, and every team had to give up bodies. And that was the whole point of contention. Like, people wanting to rebuild, people not wanting to rebuild. I don't want to go. I want to go. Just, it was a circus there for a couple weeks. It was.
Do you want to describe a little bit more in detail how many lost? What happened?
Well, without getting many specifics, the weather was not in favor. It was a high illume night, and a force went out and got contacted and needed to launch a QRF, and they launched in that troop to be a QRF, and on final they got shot down. Everybody's in there, like, you've got an amazing force, you've got the world's best sitting in the back of this flying school bus. It lands down, they shoot it out of the sky.
Just to see the families, man, and their faces, and the tears, and the kids that had no clue,
Man.
that their dad's gone, their uncle's gone. It was traumatic. It was traumatic to try to find words to comfort them. And those words, they were hard to come by, if any. What do you say by I know, I'm sorry. He was awesome. What do you say? And Obama came out, and I'm not a fan of his policies or anything whatsoever. I'm not a fan of him at all. But I will tell you this. He greeted and shook everyone's hand in that room, and there was a lot of people. He went to every single person. And I was like, that's cool. I was like, regardless of what BS you're involved with, I was like, that was cool. And when we went to the hangar to offload the C-17s with all these caskets, flag draped, he stood at a hand salute, a very crisp one, the whole time. That dude did not move. And we were like going on like 3 days no sleep. I mean, we're sitting down because we're like exhausted. Our backs are killing us from the pain of just operating. And that dude did not move. He was just crisp. Did not move for 45 minutes. Like nothing. The whole time. And as much as I don't agree with his policies and all the corruption I think that he's maybe involved in, he earned some respect from me on that day. For showing that right there, to the respect for those men. I have to give that to him. I have to. I saw it with my own eyes. So after that, they have to do their autopsies and try to put body parts with whoever. I mean, gosh, however you do that. I mean, there was caskets coming back with just body parts. Like, no names, just body parts. Legs, hands, heads. I think there was like 2 caskets full of this. So I had time. I went back to Virginia Beach. I got my blues. Stayed one night. I had my girlfriend at the time. Flew in from Oklahoma. Stayed one night. Went back up to Dover to catch an Angel flight with Jason. And so we get on the bird, and there's another casket that gets on. I'm kind of confused. I've never done an Angel flight before. And it was an Army guy that passed at a different operation. And his little escort was on there too. So we fly, we drop them off. I think it was at St. Louis. They get off, and then it's just Jason and I. Went on to Blanding. And I just remember just like staring at his casket, like just attempting to process things. And I just couldn't. And when I got to Blanding, his brothers were there. He's got 3 brothers and his mom and his dad. And they're an amazing family. Amazing family. And his wife and his son Jax, who was the same age as my son Tristan. So that made it worse, seeing him. And we had a memorial service out there, and I was out there with him for 2 weeks because there's all these memorial services going around because there's so many guys. And our command like chartered a huge bus, I think a couple buses, and they're just hitting all these spots. And we were like 2 weeks in line, and I'm just sitting out there with his brothers. And every night, what do? You get tore up. Drinking, suppressing, stuffing. Because I know what to do. There's not a manual out there that tells you what to do. Because no one knows what you're feeling. No one knows your insides. We can put a scientific name to it, but they don't know. They don't know. And everyone handles things differently. And mine was drinking. To the point of passing out every night so I could sleep, because I would not sleep if I didn't have something. Or at least that's what I thought. Maybe I just developed a habit. I don't know. But I felt like I had to have it. To think about Mike, Nate, Louie, Adam, 2 troop on Extortion, Josh Harris, Colin Thomas, guys that I did training with. Axelson. And buds with him. Like just the numbers of like all these guys I went to training with, and now they're all gone. And it's like, I knew before I went that was going to be my last deployment. But that was like, I was like, okay, I need to stop the Eddie show and think about your kids. And I did not want to do that. I did not want to get off that train. It's like the train was going on. The operator gets left at the train station. But the identity is gone.
You just can't plan for it. I mean, you just can't. It's 31 people gone, including some Afghan partner forces, but an entire troop of people.
Yeah.
It's just gone. And I mean, things that people don't think about, things that I know that haunt other individuals is, think about the guy who missed that deployment, had a shoulder surgery and wasn't there. Think about the guy who had to go home for a birth of his kid. You should have been there. Like, that's going to weigh on that dude forever. And it is. I don't know, I just remember walking into the building and it being so somber, just, you didn't know where to smile, like, you wanted to have fun at work, but you couldn't. Like, how dare you smile right now? It was one of those things, like, and it wasn't a forced, thing, it's just, it's what it was. I mean, we were in the trenches for a long time, man. We just were, and it felt like it was so hard to get back out of it. We tried to rebuild, and we've got the force, and they're back, and they dumped every dude. They pulled guys from all the other teams and tried to rebuild that one troop, and they grabbed some f***ing all-stars, man. They did. Like, they spared no expense. They grabbed some serious talent, and they rebuilt. And they built a dynasty. Like, they built some dudes. It was like one thing after another, so we get them all back up, and that's 2011. So I had Nick Check in my team. We were in the same 5-man team, and he got pulled out to go over there to backfill when all the guys got killed in Extortion. And it didn't feel right. It didn't seem right. Him and my wife were really tight. We did our first platoons together. And when he went over, I rolled into his team as a new guy. And I loved him, man. God, he was awesome. He just was. He was everything you wanted a teammate. He came over and retiled my entire kitchen, him and my wife, when I was on deployment, before his first deployment with the command. Up until the last hour, he drove to the command covered in tile soot and put on fresh clothes and got on the plane.
Yeah.
Like, great dude. And we just came back from Afghanistan deployment in between Extortion. So we backfilled them, had to sleep in their beds, had to do that whole thing. That's a very sombering thing to have to do. I mean, it's the reality. Like, this is what it is. Sleep in a dead guy's bed. So, just another reality check. Trying to get in there and hit a really good target set, and everything's great, and we're going to work. It's all steady in the back of your mind. It's like, any moment here, any moment, this thing's going to get us.
Finally had his memorial service out there in Blanding, and one of the guys of the command, Jason loved Robert Earl Keen. I don't know if you're familiar. He's an awesome singer. And I didn't even know anything about him until Jason got me. He'd always come over to my trailer when we were in Baghdad, that second deployment. That was his first. And we'd watch movies and, drink and all that stuff. And we'd play Robert O'Keen. Someone reached out to Robert, kind of explained the situation. He shows up at the memorial service, gets up on stage, sings I'm Coming Home. And finished the song. Everyone's in tears. No one clapped. No one did anything. He got his guitar, sat down in the most classy way I've ever seen. Like he just, gave his respect. No questions asked. From what I understand, that conversation was like, I'll be there. There was no, oh, are you going to cover this? It was none of that. It was like, I'm there. Like, that was one of my fans, and he did that, and he was doing this. I'm there. That is America.
Yeah.
That is America. That is respect. That is how you earn it, by example. And that man is an example. He is a phenomenal, phenomenal man. Never talked to him. I don't need to. I watch his actions. the way he handled himself. He didn't want to do signatures. He didn't want to do anything. He just walked in with his Johnny Cash all black suit on, played that guitar, sang a song that Jason was definitely smiling down on, did what he came to do, left. And then after the memorial service that night, we went to a place called Spirit Cove, drank, of course, and just talked Jason stories and had fun. The buses were there from all the people going to all these memorial services. I mean, we're just like, can you imagine this? Like, it's just death. You're just consumed with death.
I can't imagine that.
You're consumed. Everyone's like crying. You drink too much, you're crying. You're not drinking, you're crying. You're like, but you don't know what to do with yourself. It's like, what do I do with my hands? You know what I mean? It's like you just don't know. And after that, it was time for him to go back to Arlington. So we go back to Arlington, and we're there, and they've got them all lined up next to each other. All the guys that decided to go to Arlington, and Jason was right next to Millsy, who was a really good friend with. And Stacy and Jason had this thing for rainbows. And sure enough, she looks back. I'm kind of standing behind them. You know, we got Jax, and I got Stacy, family, and I'm kind of behind them. And she looks back to ask a question or something, and she just looks at me. She like pauses. She gets like a weird look on her face, and she goes, "There's a rainbow behind you."
Wow.
I turn around, and it was the brightest, most colorful rainbow I've ever seen. Just seeing that, I was done. I was taken out at the knees. Emotions took over that I was stuffing and stuffing and stuffing and trying to be a pillar of strength for his family. I was just standing behind him, hoping they would not look back at me, bawling. It took me out. It was like internally took me out. I was done. So we do the service, you know, put the trident on the coffin. I had a couple extra, I had another trident I had to do Millsy's, put one on him and then put one on Jason. And then I went back home.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.